2001 was a leap forward not only in science fiction but in visual effects. It managed to highlight a few updated techniques as well as show logical solutions to simple filmmaking problems. And surprisingly enough, it's not dated, even 47 years later. People still use this film today to try and prove that Kubrick faked the moon landing, a la Capricorn 1 style.
One secret no one ever suspected is that I really did stage the moon landing. On Venus! Aroo!
But that's a conspiracy for another day. To understand just how impressive it is, you have to look at the state of visual effects at the time. VFX in the 1960s had already made some great leaps. Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds showcased not only a fusion of matte paintings, live action and rotoscope through its aerial shots, as well as projecting completed scenes behind a treadmill full of children running. In 1964, Jason and the Argonauts displayed through stop motion not just mythical creatures, but an entire fight scene between a puppet of Jason and a skeleton warrior. Later that year, Disney's Mary Poppins was released, featuring an entire 18-minute sequence with live actors in a cartoon environment, even interacting with cartoon characters. Even from a historical standpoint, Kennedy gave his
"We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard"
speech in '61. John Glenn became the first American in space in 1962, and Saturn V was in 1966. By the time 2001 came out, we hadn't even been to the moon yet, and all images of Earth were only partial and in black and white. We've come a long way in 50 years. This brings us to 1964, when Kubrick was going into production on 2001. With Arthur C. Clarke already on board and a story being written, the next step was to figure out how to show all their ideas on screen. How do you show zero gravity? What would working on a space station actually be like, and how would ascending to the next level of evolution actually look? I mean, that's something we can't even imagine now. During early production, Kubrick attended the 1964 New York World's Fair and witnessed the motion picture To the Moon and Beyond. He was so impressed with what he saw, he hired the film's special effects producer, Douglas Trumbull, to work on 2001. The rest, as they say, is history, but we're kind of here to answer that. If you look back at the state of science fiction before 1968, spaceships were lean, simple, pretty much looked like someone had either flipped a saucer over or just placed a bottle on the floor and, well, gave it a fancy paint job. Nonetheless, they're all sci-fi classics, not knocking them. Just saying. So, let's start with something easy. Zero gravity. Early in the film, Dr. Floyd is seen to be on his way to the moon. Yeah, insert your own Pink Floyd reference here. A pen is seen to have floated out of his pocket, where a stewardess picks it out of the air and returns it to his pocket. Films of this era would typically use string or fishing wire to create this illusion, but 80% of the time the string would be visible and would be hard to disguise this close to the camera. So they went for an even simpler, if highly practical, technique instead. Simple glass and double-sided sticky tape. A clean sheet of glass would be slowly rotated between the camera and the scene. The pen would be held in place with double-sided sticky tape that the actress would then have to remove. Okay, now we've solved anti-gravity with no strings. How do we show a circular space station? Let alone how do you work in one? Well, have you ever seen a hamster run around a wheel? Same thing. Only make it the size of a carnival Ferris wheel. So the iconic shot of Bowman running around the ship, a camera was fixed to one spot of the wheel as it was moved around, and Bowman simply ran in time with its movements, creating the illusion that the room was still. In shots such as this one, the foreground and camera are actually moving. She is walking essentially on the spot. Techniques like this are still used today. Look no further than Christopher Nolan's Inception for a decent example. On to the big one, the Stargate, or as some people know it, the acid trip. Though originally the sequence was going to be much different. The scene's original draft used various pieces of art by Kubrick's wife, Christiana Kubrick.
Stanley walked around saying, please draw me an image that doesn't remind me of anything, in a color that doesn't exist. Big joke.
But thanks to Douglas Trumbull, we are left with a stunning and memorable piece of movie history. This famous and often imitated scene was created using slit scan photography and was most commonly used at the time to determine the winner in horse races. That's right, the most impressive visual effect of the 60s was done using the same technique just to see who won a horse race. Never underestimate the little things. The camera would be positioned in one place, with a single slit between the camera and the subject, taking a continuous shot at the same position. Any photographs taken in this method would work in time rather than space. In 2001, the camera was placed on a platform that would be moved on a y-axis, moving backwards and forwards, aimed at a 4-foot slit. Behind the slit was a gel pattern plate that could be moved side to side on the x-axis. The camera would be set to a slow shutter speed and move backwards and forwards for each frame. Bear in mind that films are shot between 24 and 60 frames per second. Using split screen and the occasional overlay of an eye or environment, the Stargate sequence was born. Nowadays, this technique is relatively easy to duplicate, especially with tools such as After Effects. But knowing how much effort and time went into the original just makes it that much more special. Kubrick's seminal masterpiece has stood the test of time, even past its predicted date, and is still debated now. The hard work of these men and women show the evolution of man on the screen, and the evolution of VFX in the industry. If you're a fan of science fiction or just visual effects, then you owe it to yourself to see it. Though, you've probably seen it in some form or another. It's safe to say you already know it. So, pop in the film. You never know, you might spot something new. Hey guys, thank you for joining us for this first episode. We are really nervous on this side to see what you guys think. If you have an idea for another episode, post it in the comments below. If you like us, then please hit the like button so we know you liked us. Seriously, we're that shallow. If you're into vlogs, our friend Miss Knickknack just did a top 10 of her favourite Disney films over here. You never know, you may find something cool. Signing off. Later, Internet.